right, so thank you so much for being part of our program. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Just mind the pacing, because these little old legs might not be able to keep up with yours.
Just tell me, I'll slow it on down.
Thank you. Be like my run. Thank you so much for joining us. And you know that I'm on a mission to rehumanize people across difference, and taking away the ability to make bias judgments based on what you see. So you won't appear on camera, but I would love to hear more about your story. Yeah. So tell us, you can start with your childhood, you can start as far back as you want.
Sure. So I was raised blue collar. My mom would clean our church, and what else would she do? She was a nurse's assistant, these sorts of jobs. And my dad was an electrician, journeyman electrician, but he always had me running around apprenticing on electrician gigs out in Eastern Washington things. And grew up in old Seattle, hanging out in coffee shops, talking to cast of crazy characters, people running like National UFO Reporting Center or like hotel, millionaire magnate, or, sometimes these characters are the same people, but really, the hippie flower child post era, doing odd jobs, learning about mechanics and electrical work. My grandfather was the first black credentialed professional engineer, electrical engineer in Pacific Northwest. Helped found Liberty Bank. Personally identified, he's got lots of grandkids, but so started a bank, and so to help get home loans to black population of the Central District of Seattle, which was in the 1960s. He founded the bank in '68, was mostly black neighborhood, and prior to that, a bunch of Japanese Americans had lived there, and of course the war stuff kind of displaced them, and then Jewish community and so forth, and a lot of those folks moved out to Magnolia, Sense, and all this kind of stuff. But anyway, so grew up in this legacy of civil rights, and my dad had 5 brothers, so in the story of the work that they'd been doing in community, and my uncle was a brilliant chemist who dosed himself on acid to the point of no return, but just, these brilliant, but also we say idiosyncratic people. And so there's always been thread of genius and madness in my family. So I'm biracial. My mom's white lady, Lithuanian, Belgian ancestry. My grandfather, white man, John Henry, white man named John Henry, classically racist, fought in World War II and got a big old plot of land back in Minnesota, and married my grandma, who was a Tetsagelski, I guess that's the Lithuanian, and her family had made shells for the Germans in World War I, and then jumped ship after that, went south, got to the US, and so any old way. Those are people I come from. My side of the family we don't talk to so much. We've been to some big things out in Minnesota where they kind of migrated to after the war. You got a big old dairy farm out there in Itasca County, right off the Mississippi River there. My grandfather's people from Kansas region came out there for Bleeding Kansas when they were deciding if it was going to be a free state or a slave state or whatnot. So I got all that legacy. And so myself, my grandfather passed, when I was 4 years old. And so I never got to meet the man, but I always kind of lived in his stories of starting the bank and building this beautiful electrode grid to steer fish away from, some of the first hydroelectric dams at that time. And it was just, this bigger than life thing for a kid growing up in a little blue collar town who'd been running around, installing doing people's kitchens, electrical work and different things like this. And I always kind of wanted to do that. And it was in the midst of the birth of the internet. So 1993 is when the White House got its first website. And that was when I was building the first computer labs for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Pierce County. The CTO of that organization came into my high school in my typing class, and he was doing some sports stuff with my typing instructor, and basically was asking if we wanted to start a technology club. And so I said yes to that with about 5 other boys, and we started building new computers, or refurbished computers out of the broken computers from the school districts that the Boys and Girls Club had stacked up in a squash court at one of their facilities as part of an arrangement. It's gone. And so yeah, that's how I got my start in computer science. So I've since then gone off to Gonzaga, got a couple degrees in engineering, computer science, electrical engineering, worked in engineering for about 20 years. And what else is there about this? When I was, so kind of the thing that, it's funny, these are the things that in my mind define me, but what defines me to a lot of other people that just kind of rock up to me are that I'm in a wheelchair. So I'm actually a paraplegic. And growing in this blue-collar town, it was Tacoma in the 2000s era. The drug war was raging pretty hard, and all my, age of innocence friends were now at this point in our high school lives weighing out drugs on scales and going out doing shady things. And
You and your friends?
not me. I was a nerd, so I was just I was in the mix trying to get my book reports done, but you can't help the environment that you're in. So what happened was. This kid who'd been playing a basketball game with my friend's cousin, epic shit talker, did not spare this person. And that person came back in the evening throwing rocks at my friend's house. This was, spin up to the Iraq war, that time period after 9/11 had happened. So my friend's dad was a National Guardsman, and they were about to get deployed. So they were all out training in Yakima. So this kid's throwing rocks at my friend's house where his dad's gone. So it's him, his little sister, and his mom. And so I come out after my friend busts in my door and she's like, oh, you gotta come over. And being I was 17 at the time, just dumb kid thinking I'd go over there, settle things and head back home and sleep. And so went over there, nothing was going on. And so my favorite band at the time, Linkin Park, right, had just released the Meteora album. And so I was like listening to it with my friend's little sister, who was a big fan of the band as well, in my car. And then all of a sudden 2 cars full of people come up. And they're just filled with, 17, 8-year-olds jumping around because the kid that had been throwing rocks went up to this Masonic lodge that was being rented out for a dance and just got a bunch of random people saying that some kids wanted to fight him or whatever, which was not what we wanted. But yeah, so those guys come up, they're bouncing around, and I'm like, get out there, and I start lecturing them about, hey, we're not, wanting to fight or anything, but somebody's throwing rocks at my friend's mom and little sister's house, you don't like that. So the thing's diffused, but then one of the kids who's behind me, but across maybe a 1-lane road, says, F this, I came for a fight, and shoots me 3 times through the back and arm, and through the arm into the stomach. So I got a bullet in my stomach, and then through my shoulder into my left lung, cleft my left lung, and then got stuck in my spinal cord, like top dead center in my T10 vertebrae, just a complete severance of the spinal cord. So I'm paraplegic from T10 vertebrae down. Which gives me like very limited sensory ability. Can't feel like hot or cold necessarily, but the normal feeling is like what you feel like when you come out of snow and you put your hands in like slightly warm water, where it's like a kind of tingling feeling. And so took half a year off of college. So I went like a semester late to go to Gonzaga. But I got used to the wheelchair, and originally my plan was, because we didn't have any money, was to go to the, because my grandfather did not do the 3 generations thing. We were supposed to pass it down. He left it to his, his second wife. So my grandma died in childbirth and caused a whole bunch of rift in the family. But anyway, so the consequence of this was that I was a blue-collar kid in Tacoma at the time, and so with the absence of money, needed to get to college some kind of way to pursue my nerdly interests of electrical engineering. So I was going to go into the Air Force Academy to do this. So I was in ROTC in high school and all the junior ROTC in high school and all these things. And I was just getting through my physical exam when I got shot and couldn't go. So I had to figure out a new plan. Old Billy Boy Gates was slashing some money around through the Achiever Scholarship that he and his wife had set up the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, got some scholarships out. He had just bought like laptops for all of the middle schoolers in Redmond, and so he was, really doling out the cash. And so my high school was one of the candidates for this program, as long as they accepted that they had to change curriculum and do all this kind of stuff to accommodate his educational, models and things like that. So I got that money, and my high school counselor, who is associated with that grant program, she worked with me to get through all the application stuff, and I had bullet holes in me still that were healing up, but I went out and took my SAT, It's like the last group of people that could take the SAT out in Tumwater, Washington. And but so got through all that and got out to college. And if I had the choice to go through 2 engineering programs or get shot a 4th time, I would have gladly taken a 4th bullet, because that was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Wheelchair, all the whatever it is. That 2 engineering degrees at the same time in Spokane, Washington was crazy. So, but got through that, and that happened. I graduated in 2010, getting through the double degrees. I had 1 year where I had gotten in a snowmobile wreck, just being stupid, driving a snowmobile around, it was like Copper Mountain out in Eastern Washington. And so I had a whole year where I was stuck in my room just healing from this wound. So that added a year to my college thing. Then when I graduated, it was in the heart of the recession. So the 2008, housing recession. But because Gonzaga is like this incredibly hooked up, Catholic school, I went to this like eyes wide shut part. Now it wasn't that intense, but went to this like recruitment thing where they drove us all out, and we were in this fancy hotel and getting courted by all these companies when everyone else was like really struggling. And I was one of 2 engineers recruited by Fluke up in Everett. The other recruit was the son of one of the founding engineers of the company. And so I felt really special having a job at that time, and was able to leverage that career to go down to Silicon Valley. Came back from Silicon Valley after getting, real estate. I got 2 houses down there and developed them into my little nerdly kingdoms, and did a lot of gardening. So that's why we're walking around a nice little like arboretum style kind of thing here. But then after George Floyd happened, I just felt like there wasn't enough like positive forward momentum in society, especially along like racial lines, like the racial wealth gap. I feel like was a big contributing factor. What would happen to me, and then what's happening in terms of George Floyd's life, leading up to, and then also the resulting tragedy that happened. So I was just like, well, let's work on building an economic engine for Black diaspora, and tapping into what my cousin Wai King was doing, building out Africa Town in the as a component of my grandfather's legacy with the bank that he founded in that central district of Seattle. Joining that because they'd just gotten, as a result of the George Floyd protests, the beautiful Fire Station number 6, this Art Deco building that was built in like the 1930s. They'd got that turned over. They wanted to turn it into a youth workforce development hub around STEM, getting youth into the knowledge economy. And I, built systems like this out in the Boys and Girls Club as a kid, and then, I knew what the industry needed and what it would need in the future, because I've, been at the cutting edge of stuff in Silicon Valley, and, saw a little bit of this AI stuff coming. And so I wanted to go build all that stuff for the kids in the Central District to get them access to, all the AI, Amazon, Google, Microsoft stuff that had come in. And from there, went on sabbatical for 6 months to build that out. And then as a result of a bunch of different ballot measures, Africa Town got this beautiful Japanese retirement home that had a 175 bed capacity turned it into a men's shelter to reduce the overrepresentation of Black males in the homelessness statistics in Seattle. And so, did all the network engineering, back office, innovation stuff for that, and really started building out like a campus for them. And then from that, I was like looking at, well, where's all this going? We're getting all these kids in the knowledge economy. We're, making sure their families are stabilized and housed in this region where they can, find jobs and prosper and get better and heal. But I was feeling like, okay, well, if we get these kids in the knowledge economy, how do we get them owning their own businesses and, really owning a piece of the pie, not just like working and maybe getting some stocks in existing enterprises, but having a controlling share of like the capital that runs the city. And that got me into angel investing, like getting money to people that wanted to start really high growth businesses that, could scale up and do the Jeff Bezos story or the Mark Zuckerberg story or the Elon Musk story, but people from Black diaspora culture, where we've been, part of this big economic embargo for the longest time, and just now getting on the property ladder, all these things. So turned into venture capitalists, built community around these high growth ventures, and which ended up being the first the time someone had thought to do that in Seattle. And so that's the work I do now and why I do it and my thing.
That's amazing. So I notice that when you're talking, you really do, that part of the story that most people see is really short, is really small, like a small section of your life. And then, do you view yourself as different?
Yeah. But to me, I think when people see me, and I think when I first came into this situation, it seemed like a disadvantage or like something you have to overcome and like all these kind of things. But for me, it's like access to a different way of seeing the world that is kind of a privilege. Like, I don't say that to like be inspirational or anything like that. It really helps me look at the motivations for things in the world that people don't quite get the same exposure to. Like, I don't, everybody looks at me differently, so I get to know people like for who they are as opposed to who they want me to think they are, right? Because other than that, if they're really good actors, right, like maybe I don't perceive it. But, and then I have to think more. I'm like an engineer, so I do a lot of problem solving just naturally. And, it's like I enjoy solving the kind of problems that it presents in my life. And like in terms of like so I have like a interesting blend of ethnic mix, and then, with the disability, I'd like get to really slice and dice perspective. Like I get to see these different racial lenses. I get to see the able-bodied or disabled or handicapped lens and how society sees it and does or doesn't support it. I've been able to travel the world and see who cares, how they care, who says they care, don't care about like people being able to fully actualize their human potential, and gives me all these different ideas about economic theory and about who's supported and who's not and why that matters. And so it just illuminates all these chapters of life that I think a lot of people get to be complacent about. And I think that it comes at a cost to them personally, that I don't think it just, people think, oh, that's normal, that's default, but it's like, it's a bit of a disadvantage to not be able to see what's in front of you in a real way. And the other aspect of it is, it's like, I went through and did all this hard stuff, and a lot of people live their whole life never knowing what they're capable of. And I think it weighs on people. It's like people get addicted to, distractions, because life is just on easy mode. And I think when you have to work a little harder for it, you get a different sense of what's valued. And so I really like that, and feel like I've gotten an opportunity for that. And I feel like a lot of other cultures, like globally, kind of put themselves in situations of like, what do you call it? Asceticism, or what's the word? Scarcity, or just they put themselves in difficult situations to stimulate this kind of viewpoint that I get for free. And so,
I've never heard of that perspective before. That's actually really cool.
I mean, it was tough initially being a 17-year-old kid and being like, oh, guess what? Like, no girl wants to talk to you now because you're in a wheelchair. That's great. Everybody's going to be like, oh, do you need help every time you move anywhere in the world,
Yeah.
And I was a string bean. You saw the photo earlier today, right? So
Yes.
I, didn't have the shoulders I got these days, so I couldn't do a whole lot. And had to work for that. But, so you had to figure all that out. But, so there were about 2 years of like madness where I was just so mad at everything being so different all at once, and like all of these shifts that I couldn't make sense of as a young person that didn't know anything about the world. And so, now looking back, it's so funny. I'd like been to a bunch of religious schools. I was raised a Southern Baptist kid, went to all these like Bible study schools, all this kind of stuff. But I left, church for a long time. And when this thing happened, I was like, okay, let's see if religion has any answers. I've come up empty and everything else. So I go to church, my old Baptist church in Tacoma, and rock in there, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice that I couldn't get to like the normal seating. I had to sit like behind some glass, like in the like foyer of the church. I was like, oh, that's so weird, like the perspective that I've been forced into. And then the sermon is just patience. I was like, oh, what a cruel thing. What a cruel thing. Just wait it out, kid. Yeah, it sucks, but wait it out. But it was true, more or less. So good on him. But,
How do you approach dating?
Oh God.
Or how have you approached dating since the incident?
Avoiding it. No. Oh God. Yeah, it was crazy. So when the incident happened, little geese, little ducks. When the incident happened, I was in a 4-year relationship with a gal in high school. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is rough. I'm going to be living a completely different life. I was like, what if women don't even find me attractive anymore? And so I broke up with her. It was traumatic, right? Because here, your loved one has just been brutally, attempted murdered. And so I was recuperating and all among all of this. Now it's just like, what does this mean? You're not my boyfriend anymore. So I further traumatized my loved one with that. And but we got back together in college and stuff. So it was just figuring stuff out, like a youthful relationship kind of thing. Like we stay in touch, and all this kind of stuff. We're still really good buds. But
You went to the same university?
well, we went to different universities, like just down the street from each other in Eastern Washington.
Gotcha.
So I occasionally accuse her of following me to university, but no, it was good. It was a good thing. And yeah. So after that, yeah, went out and just was like serial monogamous, and it was just like I don't know. I didn't have really good parental role models towards like steady relationships, so I'm just figuring it out. Not like I wouldn't say I was like a rake or anything like this old terminology, but I wouldn't say I was out there playboying it up or whatever. But there's definitely a bit of this, finding yourself out in person. And yeah, I think things came to a head when I was really getting in my professional career as an engineer, because I didn't have like a whole lot of time to spend with people that I really cared about. And there was this dramatic moment when I was moving down to California. I was in a 7, 8 month relationship, and I wasn't really processing things right because I had to find a place to live in California for the relocation, and I'd have to report to work then a couple weeks later. So I had 2 days to find where I was going to live, and I kind of wanted to buy a house or like a condo or something. The woman that I was dating was at the time was like a really well-to-do white woman. Like I'm biracial, black, and like she came from like a completely different background, blue collar background. Her folks were like aged money from Michigan, and so she was like, "Oh, you got to get all this condo with these travertine floors." I don't know what travertine was at the moment. It's just like, how about I get something that doesn't put me hundreds and hundreds of thousands of that? I just, as a young person, I couldn't process it. I was like just turning 30 at the time, and so she had thought that it would be more of like a kind of a romantic dating sort of thing. And when that I didn't deliver on what she had imagined, she almost like threatened to kill us, like actually threatened. It was like vanilla sky moments. And I quickly persuaded her that if we didn't fill the car up with gas, like what she was threatening to crash on the freeway in California, I was like, if we don't pull the car over and get gas, then they're going to charge you for the refills. For her frugality overcame her murderous rage, and so pulled over. I threw my wheelchair together faster than any F1 pit crew you've ever seen, and jumped into that thing and just started leaving down the block. She's following me and just giving me the riot act. And people are stopping the car to ask her if I'm bothering her.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh God, she could say anything she wanted, and my life would be fundamentally changed. And she was the aggressor. And I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know. I felt responsible in a way. I was like guilty because I was like, God, I've made this person behave in this way, and I didn't ever want to make someone behave that way again as I was figuring my life out, even at the age of 30, where I guess some people got married in the first 30 at least. But I wasn't there. And so I just said, okay, pause. You're gonna whatever you need that you don't know quite what it is just yet. Give yourself time to figure it out. And so I said, no more relationships, like fundamentals, no more relationships. So committed to that for a decade, an entire decade.
Wow.
And there were people, that would come back from different parts of my life and wanted to date or whatever. But I was just like, oh, no. It was very difficult to wrap my head around. But it was nothing related to being a paraplegic or anything like this. It was all just like wanted to figure myself out. I didn't have like a normal life plan that I could identify. I mean, maybe that part was related to paraplegia, but I think it's more just and my family were a bunch of like pioneers and explorers and things like that. As I was mentioning just earlier at lunch, went out to San Diego. Part of that trip was I was meeting with a woman who is she's in like high-end like commercial real estate sort of stuff, and she had recently moved down to San Diego, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in San Diego for this medtech conference, let's meet up. And like, tending to have like a more businessy conversation, but it immediately turned into this like flirting thing.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, all right, and so on a date like the next day as I'm supposed to be at this conference, and I'm just like, it was the first time I'd really, thought about like fully kind of committing to something, even though it's like this kind of thing. I was just like, okay, well, yeah, let's consider this.
Wow. So you have game. Oh no. So you have game. That was as a friend speaking.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And so whenever people think, whenever at least I think about people in wheelchairs or people that are working with a disability or with ability challenges, sex never comes up. Like that thing that never comes up. But that's just like a part of everyday normal life.
Oh no, it gets weird.
Does it get weird?
No.
Okay. Okay. How does it get weird?
Women ask me if it works like in the middle of like a family restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
Legit.
Really?
Craziness. It's like, huh.
Oh my
all right,
gosh.
and I can't blame them. They're curious. Obviously, this is an important part of their lives.
Right? Exactly.
Like,
that's not a good way to find out, but this might be.
Yeah, like
and
not in a Perkins.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And so it took some getting used to. There were differences, or was exactly the same?
I mean, there's differences. I think, like your body like has different function and different things like that. But it's like, at the end of the day, people are just figures. It all just works out. I don't know how to explain it. It's, yeah.
Good enough. I feel like that's good enough. That's good enough.
I mean, because I think the way I had to explain to me is just like so much of attraction and things like that and desire, all this stuff is in your brain. And it's like whatever physical changes you have and things like that, that connection just forms anyway. But I think it's not for everybody. Different people have like different things, and know their themselves and their types. And it takes all kinds in this here world. Like I'm even surprised as like a fairly vanilla person that just happens to be in a wheelchair, the things that go through young women's minds. Just a part of the spectrum.
Gotcha. And so the last part of this was because the people obviously who approach you in restaurants or even approach you with just like random questions, you must get that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you handle those? I know for myself, I'm always curious. But you never ask because that's what we're sort of raised to do. Do you feel like it's an inconvenience or rude for people to come up and ask what your story is and how you ended up in a wheelchair?
No, not for me personally, because to me, it's like an interesting story. And so I'm not, but it's funny because I don't know if this part made it on the previous series, but it was like, people are not necessarily ready to hear the answer that they're asking for the question they're asking. And it's like, you tell them, and some people live with relatively low turmoil in life. And when I tell them, oh yeah, I was shot 3 times when I was like a kid, you know what I mean? They just, that world of possibility opens up to them all at once at a party when they thought they were asking like a benign question about maybe to hear something about a car accident, And they're just like, oh, the world exists where 17-year-olds are just getting shot by other relatively young people. And it's like, and here's this guy who, is like an engineer telling me about, this happening. So it's like, oh, so it could have happened to me. And that's what's really going on in people's mind is their fear of the unknown. And, oh, what is it like to be paraplegic? What is it like to all these experiences that they have little mini nightmares about? I was on a Reddit forum and they're like, oh, what's the fastest way to mess your life up? And like top of the list, break your back. Next was knock someone up that you hate.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, well, At least I'm just, one of the two sucks that like at the top of the thing.
Oh, goodness.
But yeah. So it could be worse, I guess. But the yeah. So what am I trying to say about this? Yeah. So it's just sometimes I don't tell people the truth about it because I kind of feel people up for their readiness to hear kind of a story like that. And if we're at like a cocktail party or something like that, I'm like, oh, I'm just curious. I'm not gonna like blow anybody's mind in that moment. I'm just gonna like, oh yeah, car accident or whatever. So that's a part of it too, is like having to reconcile with the fact that as open as I want to be with people, it's like people aren't all ready for it.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I heard that, I was very surprised. You make something up?
I'll make something up. And so I try to be consistent so that like
so
not too many
people in the room are wait, what did he tell you?
You're
that
lying out to like keep it to a narrow set so you can navigate the story back if you get called out like later on in life. Like, wait a minute, you were shot?
Yes. That's not what you told me. Which one of them is a lie?
Yeah.
And then if you meet other people who use wheelchairs, do you ask?
Not really, because everybody's processing this like fundamentally different. I noticed I had this great experience in college in undergrad. So I was engineering, right? And the dean of the engineering school, it's like, hey, I got a buddy. He's been asking me. I've been telling you about him, about you, and he's been asking me if you'll go talk to these middle school students, or no, they were high school students, but I'm old, so they look like middle school students. It's like, would you talk to them about college entry and like what it took and like, your life story up to, where you're at here. And this is Gonzaga, right? And so the guy is in a wheelchair, and so he's got a wheelchair accessible van and all this stuff. And so he's driving that morning. We're in this van, and I'm already on the way to this thing to go talk to these kids. He's like, so okay, well, what I really want you to cover is just your life in a gang, and what it took to get you out, and like what that was. And I was just like, I was never. Just the presumption of like black man in wheelchair.
Oh my
was the craziest
goodness
moment.
gracious!
I'm not going to lie to these children because he really wanted me to commit to the storyline. Because in his mind, he was like, "Oh, these kids are little gangsters in East Spokane or whatever."
What did you do?
So we go. Well, the other part of it too is we rock up to the building, and there's like the wheelchair access button or whatever is not working quite right, and so this couple comes and like, they let the door close like in front of this man, and he's like enraged, like just like fundamentally, bummed his whole day out. And for me, I never cared about people holding doors or anything like that. I'm just like, I'll snatch this door up. But for him, it was just like, you could tell, he was going to be ruminating on that for a little bit. I was like, oh man, that's interesting how different my experience is from his. And so we go in there, and I meet all these like adorable little high schoolers. They're coming from different rough blue collar backgrounds. Some folks are not really in that condition, but we just talked about the different sorts of things that you might include on a personal statement. Some people are like, oh, can I play my guitar? Can I tell them how much I love guitar? We just kids, sweet kids, even like the really rough face like Polynesian kids, having that experience. And then they're just like, oh yeah, I got to tell them like I like singing and all these sorts of things. There's no gang violence for any of these kids. They're just little rock stars out there. But I just thought it was so funny. The movies that people play in their head about what your experience must be like or how they would process it. There's just such a huge spectrum of that. And I like what it really taught me was you can't control other people's fear. You can only control your own, like their apprehension about the world and all these sorts of things. And so whatever you're going to tell them, if you decide whether that's the moment or, you leave them to their devices. And, when you tell someone, however they react in whatever circumstance, whether it's romantic, whether it's business, whether it's just casual, you it is what it is.
And so highlighting the fact that it's very individualized and everybody's different. So there's no general rule to approaching somebody who is the other, right? There's no rule to it. Do you have words that you would, if you could give any one message to people who approach you or to future people who are going to meet you, strangers in the street, what would you tell them about meeting you? Are there rules of engagement?
problem is that everybody's having this experience typically if they're, in some sort of disability situation. And so none of the rules, like I know what rules are for me, which is like, if I ask, that's like the situation that I need help in. And like insisting on helping me is something that is often, it's kind of like the experience when you're at a four-way stop and people are trying to be polite, but it's just like, no, you just go. Like that frustration is the experience of just like, no, I don't need the door held open or whatever. And because they don't do it right. It's the other part. It's like you clear the doorway so I don't have to roll over your feet and then feel bad about scuffing your shoes or whatever. But everybody, and then it's this weird moment after they've held the door open where they look at you like they just freed the slaves or whatever. Like, I'm getting into heaven now. God, you just opened the door. It's like,
I could see that. I could definitely see that.
But I mean, those are my rules of engagement. It was just like, hey, if I ask, then I need it. If I don't ask, then I'm good. But then like, that other gentleman's story is like, oh, well, he didn't ask and you didn't help, and now he's pissed off. So like, they don't generalize these rules. Yeah. So that would be my advice: is just remember everybody encountering this differently, and just remember this like it's pretty intense for a lot of people, and some people never get over the idea that their parents are divorced. Some people will never ever get over the thing that their life has changed, that their physicality has changed, all these different things, and people can be pretty committed to being bummed. And so just give some grace to people because you're not experiencing it. And it really, this goes for any dimension of like, if you're a man, if I know a woman, she's disgruntled or whatever, give some grace. You have no fucking idea what that thing is, like what they're dealing with, or, whatever sort of microaggression might have bummed them out, or, whatever these things mean. Give people a wide never freaking know.
Which is exactly what you've done for me. So thank you so much for taking the time. That's amazing. And the way that this works, of course, is I'm going to cover this and come in for a hug. So,
Mystery.
Yay! Mystery.
Of course.
Amazing learning. Thank you. Yay! We did it. We're gonna have to start over because the first shot is of that dog peeing. There was no way that I could. There was no place.
Why does the part that's my personal life have to be dog peeing, harsh rain?
So sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, we're just gonna leave that in. We're just gonna leave that in. How about that? That is life. Okay.